You must truly believe me. I'm actually not a fan of beating a dead horse, and if you are uninterested in the topic, I perfectly understand. But I thought it would be worth it to discuss the topic of paladins and oaths in 5th edition one last time. Because I acknowledge that I have a lot of biases. I'm fairly old. I grew up playing 2nd edition and then 3rd edition 3.5. And after that, I spent a lot less time directly with D&D. And I stuck with homebrew and 3.5 in general. So to put all my cards on the table, I'm not really a huge fan of 5th edition. I know it's very profitable and it's very popular, but I'm generally not a huge fan. That said, I know obviously that Baldur's Gate 3 is based on 5th edition, but I think there is some wonkiness there. One of the aspects of wonkiness comes down to alignment. And the argument I produced in the previous video was such that here I am, this paladin who intimidated down a goblin. As a paladin who swore an oath of the ancients, i.e. somebody devoted to nature, and then, upon attacking them, I break my oath. The problem here is that the devil is in the details. If you swear an oath of the ancients, your obligations are quite different to those of, say, a paladin of an oath of devotion, or an oath of vengeance, or take your pick. In fact, if we were to go and look at the 5th edition Player's Handbook, we would see what the obligations of a paladin of the ancients are. So let's do a direct quote here. The oath of the ancients is as old as the race of elves, and the rituals of the druids, sometimes called Fey Knights, Green Knights, or Horn Knights. Paladins who swear this oath cast their lot with the side of the light in the cosmic struggle against darkness because they love the beautiful and life-giving things of the world, not necessarily because they believe in principles of honor, courage, and justice. They adorn their armor and clothing with images of growing things, leaves, antlers, or flowers to reflect their commitment to preserving life and light in the world. So my reckoning and my reasoning here, if I'm going to be a paladin of the Oath of the Ancients, which I was in this particular playthrough, is that I am devoted to the preservation and protection of nature. Goblins, almost invariably, are despoilers and destroyers of nature. They don't help the balance, they don't help nature, they ruin it, they destroy it. So I don't see any violation of the oath there. Add to that the element of alignment, which is completely lacking in Baldur's Gate 3, and you don't really have a good notion of how you should behave. A lot of people come down, partly justifiably so, partly not, pretty hard on alignment. They see it as artificial, unnecessary, and yet it gives you a vague guideline of how you might behave. And in my old school mind, reflecting older editions of D&D, my paladin who had sworn an oath of the ancients is decidedly chaotic good. Meaning, A, I have no obligation to goblins, and B, they destroy nature anyway, so killing them should not constitute breaking that oath. Now obviously, had I played an old school paladin, a lawful good paladin, because that was the only kind, devoted to a deity that's conspicuously absent in the modern 5th edition incarnation of paladins, that is to say, they somehow derive their powers not from gods, but from something, then I probably wouldn't have backstabbed the goblins. But this is where the rubber meets the road. Alignment can be confusing and sometimes stupid, and yet it is nonetheless a good guideline to give you a sense of how a character might be best played, rather than a whim. Even setting aside alignment, I could still argue, as a paladin of the Oath of the Ancients, that goblins are my nemesis, and that I do not need to show them mercy or quarter. I understand the reasoning why alignment has been dropped, and probably in the next edition of D&D will completely disappear. But I think it has its uses, and there's a reason why it has been a perennial feature. From the very first edition of D&D up until, theoretically, 5th edition. It is very useful in giving you a certain set of guidelines, and they don't need to be a straitjacket, but it gives you an idea of how your character might act outside of the class it's playing, because a neutral good thief is going to behave very differently indeed from a chaotic evil one. And that's pretty much all I have to say on the matter. I will no longer beat this dead horse, but hopefully the input is nonetheless appreciated. But do let me know what you think about this topic. As always, I appreciate the input. And if you appreciate my input, do leave a like, comment, share, subscribe. It does really help out the channel. Thanks as always, and I'll check you out next time. Take care.